What you're looking at here is a time-based scatter plot showing property sales in Coventry during 2024, filtered very deliberately. Every single dot on this chart represents one real property sale, not an average, not a model, not a projection, an actual transaction that completed. But, and this is the important part, we're only looking at properties sold between £300,000 and £400,000. So we're zoomed into a very specific slice of the market. This is not entry-level housing, and it's not ultra-prime either. This is what I'd call the upper mid-market in Coventry. So in order to read this, we look along the horizontal axis, and this is where you've got time, January on the left all the way to December of 2024. Along the vertical axis, you've got ownership type. At the bottom, labelled A, are properties sold with absolute full ownership, which are freehold. At the top, labelled B, are properties sold without absolute full ownership, leasehold, shared interests, or more complex titles. So immediately the chart is split into two horizontal bands, freehold at the bottom and non-freehold at the top. Now look at the density of the dots. This is where the story starts to become quite clear. The vast majority of the sales in this price range sit in the A band, which is full ownership. There are hundreds of dots down here, spreading across the entire year. That tells us something very simple but very important. In Coventry, between £300,000 and £400,000, most properties sold in 2024 were freehold. This price band is dominated by houses, not flats. Now contrast this with band B at the top. There are far fewer dots, they are more spread out, they are more specific, and they tend to appear in clusters rather than consistently. That tells us that non-freehold transactions in this price range are less common, less evenly distributed through the year, and likely tied to specific developments or stock types. In other words, leasehold or complex ownership sales in this band are an exception and not the norm. Now let's talk about the colour and size, because this is where the nuance comes in. Each dot gets bigger and darker as it approaches £400,000. Light, smaller dots are closer to £300,000. If you scan the freehold band, you'll notice something interesting. The darker, larger dots, the higher value sales, are spread throughout the year, but they become more frequent as you move into late summer and autumn. This suggests that higher value freehold properties were more likely to complete later in the year, or that larger, more expensive houses tended to finish transactions in that period. This lines up nicely with what we often see in the market. Longer chains, longer build times, longer conveyancing, especially at higher values. Now look at the non-freehold band. You'll notice two things straight away. First, there are far fewer dark dots. Second, when they do appear, they tend to cluster tightly in time. This usually indicates that specific apartment blocks are completing, or phase developments releasing multiple units at once. So instead of a smooth organic flow of sales, you get bursts, and that's a very important distinction. Freehold sales tend to reflect organic market activity, whereas leasehold sales often reflect developer-driven timing. Another thing worth noting is volatility. In the freehold band, prices vary smoothly. You've got dots at 310k, 340k, 370k and 390k. And these are all intermingled. In the non-freehold band, prices are more compressed. Fewer extreme values, less spread. That suggests that non-freehold properties in Coventry within this band are more standardised, more uniform in pricing, and less influenced by unique characteristics. Again, exactly what you'd expect from flats or managed developments. Now step back and look at the whole picture. This graph is quietly telling us several things at once. First, Coventry's 300k to 400k market in the 2024 is house-led and not flat-led. Full ownership is the default, not the exception. Non-freehold properties exist in this range, but they play a secondary role. And fourth, timing matters. Different ownership types don't just sell at different prices, they behave differently across the calendar. What I really like about this visual is that it avoids averages completely. If I told you the average price in Coventry was X or the average freehold was Y, you'd miss all of this texture and intricacy. You wouldn't see clustering, timing, dominance or rarity. The chart shows behaviour, not just numbers. From an investor's point of view, this matters. If you're targeting this price band in Coventry, you're overwhelmingly dealing with freehold stock. Leasehold opportunities are rarer and more situational, and higher valued deals tend to complete later in the year. From an analyst point of view, this matters because it shows market structure, ownership bias, and how different asset types move through time. And finally, from a data point of view, this is a great example of why filtering matters. By narrowing the range, by separating the ownership, and by plotting against time, you get insight that no headline could ever give you. This isn't about asking what's the average price. It's about asking how does this market actually behave? What are the internal dynamics? And once you start asking that question, charts like this become incredibly powerful. Please like and subscribe and get in touch if you require any property analytics or advice on your property investment journey. Thanks. See you next time.